Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to today's newspaper review. Let's take a look at the stories dominating today's newspaper headlines. Firstly, we'll start from the Guardian newspaper. On the Guardian newspaper on page 6, which is boldly written there, from airports to airlines, government sink over 500 billion naira in new carriage fleets. At the top of the newspaper, OPay expand presence in Nigeria with new Kaduna office launch. Reports estimate 279 kidnappings nationwide in May. This is coming from the police, says that reports estimate 279 kidnappings nationwide in May. That was last month. To get that story, you go to page 3 of the newspaper. Atiku Amechi presidential bid unsettles ADC. Atiku Amechi presidential bid unsettles ADC. To get that full story, go to page 3 of the newspaper. At the bottom of the newspaper, Sanwo-Olu Bakare led calls for governance, geo-economic reforms. Sanwo-Olu Bakare led calls for governance, geo-economic reform. To get that full story, go to page 5 of the newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the Vanguard. On the Vanguard on page 30, which is boldly written there, troops block escape routes as terrorists reduce demands. Troops block escape routes as terrorists reduce demand. This is on Oyo school kidnap. To get that story, go to page 30 of the newspaper. At the top of the newspaper on page 5, 6 out of 7. How APC swept Ekiti government, 5 by elections, lost Rivers to PDP. To get that story, go to page 5 of the newspaper. At the bottom of the newspaper, terrorists invade KB community, burn buildings, adopt residents. To get that full story, go to page 6 of the Vanguard newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the Daily Trust. On the Daily Trust on page 4 and 5, which is boldly written there, Tuji's new appearance sparks concern. At the top of the newspaper, OPay expands presence in Nigeria with new Kaduna office launch. An online banking has opened a branch in Kaduna. They are launching their new office. APC battles petitions 4 days to opening of INEC portal. APC battles petitions 4 days to opening of INEC portal. To get that full story, go to page 8 of the newspaper. Still in the same newspaper, Kano businessman dies in girlfriend's house. A Kano businessman dies in girlfriend's house. To get that full story, go to page 10 of the Daily Trust newspaper. NDLEA arrest grandfathers for allegedly selling drugs to students. That's the Nigerian Drug Law Enforcement Agency arrested grandfathers for allegedly selling drugs to students. To get that full story, go to page 25 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the Matrix. On the Matrix, it is boldly written, Ekiti, Tinubu government, APC hail Oyibanji's landslide victory. Oyibanji is the governor of Ekiti State who won the governorship election. At the top of the newspaper, MTN, Glo, others must seek approval before change in ownership structure. This is coming from the NCCCAC. To get a full story, you go to page 3 of the Matrix newspaper. On entertainment on Matrix, Pella pays Jarvis bride price, shares moments from family ceremony. To get a full story, go to page 23. On sports, Lamine Yamal shines as Spain routs Saudi Arabia 4-0. To get a full story, go to page 25 of the Matrix newspaper on sports. Away from that newspaper to the leadership. On the leadership, which is boldly written on page 4, reaction as Oyibanji becomes first Ekiti governor to win second consecutive term. Reaction as Oyibanji becomes first Ekiti governor to win second consecutive term. To get that full story, go to page 4. At the top of the newspaper, still on OPay expands presence in Nigeria with new Kaduna office launch. Still in the same newspaper, NCC, CAC sets fresh requirements for approving telcos shareholding ownership changes. NCC, CAC set fresh requirements for approving telcos shareholding ownership changes. To get our full story, go to page 10 of the Leadership newspaper. Still in the same newspaper, current security situation close to a state of war, says McAfee. McAfee is saying current security situation close to a state of war. To get our full story, go to page 6 of the newspaper. At the bottom of the newspaper, by elections, APC wins in Enugu, Nasarawa, Kebbi, Kano, PDP clenches Rivers. To get our full story, you go to page 31 of the newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the Punch. On the Punch on page 2, which is boldly written on retirement bombshell. 5 DCGs to lead 1,516 officers out of customs. To get a full story, go to page 2 of the Punch newspaper. At the top of the Punch newspaper, Ekiti government pool. Tinubu hails Oyibanji as ADC, PDP reject results. President Tinubu hails Governor Oyibanji for winning the Ekiti state governorship election, and ADC, PDP are rejecting the results. To get a full story, go to page 7 of the Punch newspaper. At the bottom of the newspaper, ex-OGTV broadcaster guard found dead inside Ogun apartment. I'll take that again. Ex-OGTV broadcaster guard found dead inside Ogun apartment. To get a full story where ex-OGTV broadcaster guard was found dead in Ogun State apartment, you go to page 6 of the newspaper. Labour knocks government as FAAC payout hits 10.4 trillion naira. To get a full story, you go to page 39 of the newspaper. Away from that newspaper to The Hope. On The Hope, which is boldly written on page 3. APC dominates by elections, wins 5 of 6 seats. APC dominates by elections, wins 5 of 6 seats. To get a full story, you go to page 3. At the top of the newspaper on page 3, Tinubu hails Oyibanji on historic re-election victory. Congratulations to Governor Oyibanji on his victory as the Ekiti State Governor. To get our full story, go to page 3 of the Hope newspaper. At the bottom of the newspaper, Father's Day. Nigerian fathers lament mental health struggles, economic hardship. Yesterday was Father's Day, and Nigerian fathers are lamenting on mental health struggles and economic hardship. To get our full story, go to page 2 of the newspaper. Still at the bottom of the newspaper, NDLEA arrests 2 grandpas, 75-year-old grandma over illicit drug trade. Nigerian Drug Law Enforcement Agency arrests 2 grandpas and a 75-year-old grandma over illicit drug trade. To get our full story, go to page 4 and 5 of the newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the Daily Monitor. On the Daily Monitor, which is boldly written, Ekiti Guba Pool, INEC declares Oyibanji winner with 319,224 votes. At the top of the newspaper, Umahi directs suspension of Ibadan Ife Ilisa Road reconstruction. Umahi, who is the Minister of Works, directs suspension of Ibadan Ife Ilisa Road reconstruction. At the bottom of the newspaper, troops kill 2 bandits, nab 7 terror suspects in Kaduna, Zamfara. Troops kills 2 bandits, nab 7 terror suspects in Kaduna and Zamfara. Away from that newspaper to the New Telegraph. On the New Telegraph on page 2, 5, and 29, which is written, rising insecurity. Senate convenes emergency plenary tomorrow. Rising insecurity, Senate convenes emergency plenary tomorrow. At the top of the newspaper, Islamic insurance firm backs Lagos Calabar coastal road with $626 million cover. Islamic insurance firm backs Lagos Calabar coastal road with $626 million cover. At the bottom of the newspaper, APC government, Oyebanji's re-election signals Tinubu's victory in 2027. This is coming from the APC government. Oyebanji's re-election signals Tinubu's victory in 2027. How sure is this? To get that full story, go to page 2, 3, 5, and 7 of the newspaper. Lastly, at the bottom of the newspaper, NANS threatens mass action over 2 months delay in NEL fund upkeep allowances. NANS, that is the National Association of Nigerian Students, threatens mass action over 2 months delay in NEL fund upkeep allowances. To get that full story, you go to page 4 of the newspaper. That's all for today's newspaper review. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates. I'm Chidera Eso. Do have a beautiful day.